Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you on an important day. I'm recording this on Sunday, obviously, the day before the day that I am referring to. But as you are listening to this, it is the start of another New York Knicks basketball season. I was just thinking about it before I started recording, and I was like, 2023-24 season. And it didn't even occur to me last year. Not once did it occur to me last year, but this is my 30th anniversary as a Knicks fan. I've talked about it here and there, but like I followed the team barely in 92, 93. I went to my first game in 92, 93. Oddly enough, it was a playoff game that I don't have much memory of, other than that I got to eat a hot dog in Madison Square Garden, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, 93, 94 was the year that I really came into this thing for real. And yeah, it's been quite a 30 years since. Definitely, it's been in stages, and I am thankful, very thankful that I've been a Knicks fan this entire time. Not only because it's given me the opportunity to do this, which I love, but I mean this with all the sincerity in the world. It is, I think, the most character building aspect of my life thus far. The singular character building aspect. Whatever character I have, I attribute most of that, other than getting it from my mom. I attribute it to being a Knicks fan. Because if you make it through, I mean, if you make it through 1 year being a Knicks fan, let alone 30, you definitely got to have something to you. So yeah, 30 years for me, and it is going to be year 78 for the Knicks, right? Because they've been around since the beginning, and it's the 78th year for the National Basketball Association. So long time. And I wanted to do something a little different to kick off this day. So not going to be joined by anyone. You just got me for this episode, and there's a reason for that. I'll get to in a second. But first, Andrew would be very mad if I don't do this. First, shameless plug. I guess it's not a shameless plug. It's just a plug. That we're going live tonight on Monday, 7 p.m. on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel. It's going to be I don't think it'll be an emergency live stream, although who knows? We'll see what gets said, over the course of the day's festivities. But no, just a live stream. Give everybody a chance to ask any questions they have. I will, of course, comment on. I don't know if I should be calling it Media Day. I don't know that I should be calling it Content Day. Last year it was Content Day, but they also had media there, and obviously Tibbs and a bunch of the players there to, answer questions. But it was only the Knicks, man. Only the Knicks. It's like they did this big song and dance and Monica McNutt killed it. She was like kind of the host of the thing, but like they did this big song and dance, and they called it Content Day, but they still had to do the Media Day obligations. Like they still had, like, you're mandated by the league on Media Day to have reporters there, to have the beat there, and to produce a certain number of players in addition to your coach. So they like did the thing, but they kind of tried to bury that under the umbrella blanket, whatever, of this Content Day thing. And it was just like kind of funny because, like, whatever, that I'm sure some people listening to this enjoyed the Content Day festivities and whatever, but it was like, it was a bunch of fluff. And not that we got a whole lot of anything out of the media sessions, but reporters are going to ask questions that someone who is paid by the company or paid by the network that owns the team, like, is not. So all this is to say, I am sure there will be reporters present today to ask Tom Thibodeau and some other Knicks personnel some questions. I'm also certain Leon Rose will not be one of those Knicks personnel answering questions. And whether the Knicks do another, thing that they will televise or stream, I guess, as it were. Although if I recall from last year, the stream didn't go so well. So yeah, whether they do that or not, I frankly have no idea. Nobody's been told anything about it, or if people have been told, I certainly have not caught wind of it. Anyway, 7:00 live stream Monday. Be there or be square. Second on the docket, some NBA news on Sunday morning or early afternoon. I forget exactly what it was. Jrue Holiday, someone who Ian Begley reported on Friday that the Knicks were at least looking at. They were doing their due diligence on, shall we say. Got traded to the Boston Celtics. I think, and if you were a careful Twitter observer, again, what's the first rule of following NBA news or Knicks news at least? Ian Begley always knows more than he says. And I noticed someone asked him a follow-up question to his initial article that he posted on Friday about, like, does he think the Knicks are really in it, or where does he think Holiday ends up? Something like that. And he said very clearly, Boston or Clippers would be his guesses. Now, I think Ian probably had a little bit more than he knew at the time than he was willing to say, because sure enough, it's Boston. And Boston has, in fairness, Boston has been the team over the course of the weekend that had been rumored to be negotiating, that it was rumored that the Trailblazers were really trying to take it to, as far as what they were getting. And they got, I would define as a pretty nice return. So the package is 2024. It's a protected pick of some kind. It's not the Celtics' own pick. It's the Warriors' pick. 2024 Warriors pick. That definitely has some sort of protections. Maybe not. Actually, I should look into how deep those protections are. But it's a whatever. It's a Warriors pick. You expect the Warriors are going to be pretty good. So that pick, Robert Williams, Time Lord, incredibly talented center. A guy who at times during the Celtics finals run 2 years ago looked like he was not the most important player in the series, but like a vital player to the Celtics and what they were trying to accomplish, but also someone who has never been able to stay healthy. And the Celtics were not even, as far as I know at least, were not even penciling into their starting lineup this season. And he's just had a career that has been defined, unfortunately, more by injuries than anything else. But very talented player still. So now he goes to Portland along with DeAndre Ayton from the Dame deal. So it's interesting. They have two centers there. Will they hang on to both? Will they try to flip Time Lord? Will they try to play them together? I mean, who the hell knows? I don't know. But, he's a guy that definitely has value, especially signed to what is still a good contract, even with his injury issues. The guy's making like mid-level exception money. So good asset there. And Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon obviously was initially going to be in the Kristaps Porzingis trade, and then concerns over his medicals prevented Brogdon from being a part of that. I want to say Brogdon. It's been a while. So summer's long. What can I say? I want to say Brogdon was going to be diverted to the Clippers in that original Kristaps Porzingis trade, if I'm recalling correctly. I think he was going to be diverted somewhere, but the point is, it didn't end up going through in that form of the trade. Yeah, I think it was the Clippers actually. And then that's how Memphis got involved, and that's how it ended up being Marcus Smart instead to get Kristaps Porzingis to Boston. So Brogdon, some health issues, obviously, but the guy is still the reigning Sixth Man of the Year award winner, still a very talented player. And the news as of right now is that, much like they got Jrue Holiday to flip Jrue Holiday, Portland is going to try to flip Malcolm Brogdon for something else because they want to give their young guards a lot of time. We'll see what they could get for him. It feels a little presumptuous to say that they're going to be able to get any kind of a first round pick for a guy who, again, there seems to be some real health flags here. But they'll get something for him, I'm sure. So they got Brogdon. And then, of course, the big item, the headliner in the trade, a fully unprotected 2029 Boston Celtics first round pick. 2029 is 6 years from right now, notably. So that ginormous contract that Jaylen Brown signed, biggest contract in NBA history, that contract will be over by the time this pick is set to convey. Where will he be playing? Where will Jason Tatum be playing? Will Kristaps Porzingis still be in the league? We'll see how his knees hold up. So in terms of getting a real golden ticket, that's how I always refer to these future unprotected picks, future unprotected swaps. In terms of getting a real golden ticket, Boston accomplished that. And it makes sense, Portland accomplished that. And it makes sense that it was Boston that gave him the golden ticket. And it makes sense in retrospect that Boston was going to be the team that traded for Jrue Holiday, because you only give up a golden ticket like that unless you think the piece that you're getting in exchange for the golden ticket is going to be good enough to be the difference maker in, let's say, a high-level playoff series. And Jrue Holiday, for as many faults as he may have in recent years in the postseason, he's certainly good enough to make a difference in a high-level playoff series. So this is, I don't know, this is a hot take. It kind of feels like a win-win for me, for both teams. But Portland gets the big time asset, and they get to take a chance on Time Lord and get, and the 24 pick and whatever they get from Brogdon. But it's really about that 29 pick. And then Boston gets the guy who they hope will be the counter to what Milwaukee just did, which is trade for, one of the 75 greatest players of all time, second best offensive guard playing in the league right now. That sort of ilk, it's Steph, and then it's him, and then there's a gap. I don't know who you want to put third, at least in terms of that archetype. Guys who could space the floor out to 30 feet, who, is Dame a walking top 5 offense unto himself? I know some people feel that way, and certainly there are numbers that he put up last year that would justify that position. So Milwaukee made their move, and Boston made their move. And I mean, you want to talk about now must-see TV? Those Boston Milwaukee games, my God. And if those two teams should wind up meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals, and what would the odds be on that right now? A Boston Milwaukee Eastern Conference Finals, would those be is that 2-1, or are those two? No, it's 3-1, 2-1, something like that. It can't go much higher than 3-1, right? 3-1, you're betting that. But because one of those teams would need to fall to 4th in the standings for them to, for those two teams to meet in the second round. So will that happen? I doubt it. Or of course, just one of those teams loses before they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I don't know, if you gave me 4-1, I would not think twice about betting on a Boston Milwaukee Eastern Conference Finals for sure. That isn't to say that there is not risk. And now I'm going to start to transition to the Knicks. Obviously there's risk. There's risk on both sides. There's risk that Milwaukee damaged their bread and butter over the last several years, which has not been offense, it's been defense. That it took the one surefire thing that they had that they could rely on night in, night out, playoff series in, playoff series out, and basically gave it away, and now is counting on the other side of the ball making up the difference. Will it work? We'll see. Boston now not only counting on Kristaps Porzingis to hold up, because they just traded away in Robert Williams. It's weird to call a guy who's been injured as much as Time Lord has been injured, injury insurance for the guy ahead of him. But he kind of was, you figured between Robert Williams and Kristaps Porzingis, and yes, of course, 37-year-old Al Horford. Like, there was always going to be one healthy center, one healthy big man between the three of those guys. Now you've shipped one of them out. Now that proposition gets a little dicier. To say nothing of the fact that they are a little small, and the fact that they have been a little small over the years in the playoffs has hurt them at times. Boston, they just got a little smaller because you know who their 1 through 4 is going to be in crunch time. It's going to be White, Holiday, Brown, and Tatum. Like, ideally, you'd like one guy who's a little bit bigger than Tatum, and a Grant Williams type, but apparently they soured on him. So like, there's absolutely, and again, Jrue Holiday, 33 years old. We talked about it, or at least I talked about it a little bit last week on the Patreon pod and in the town hall. Shout out to all of our patrons. But like, yeah, there's risk. Absolutely, there's risk on both sides. But when you're a team like Milwaukee, and obviously they're dealing with a very unique Giannis situation, but even when you're a team like Boston, when you have a chance to win it all, and Boston already, even before this trade, I think had a chance to win it all, but they were probably looking up and be like, well, did Milwaukee just pass us? Denver, are they pass? Did they pass us? I mean, they're the defending champions. You could easily say that they did. Boston wasn't even good enough to beat Miami last year. Now Miami got a little bit worse. But you could talk about maybe one or two other teams in the West, and all of a sudden Boston's looking around and be like, oh my God, we were supposed to dominate this era. And what are we going to have? We're going to have one finals appearance to show for it. So to me, you may think that Boston overpaid for, again, a 33-year-old guard who's about to get paid a ton of money. And Boston is, if they didn't already do so, they have signed their second apron ticket in blood today with this trade, because they're going to try to, obviously, and they're going to try to work out an extension with Jrue Holiday. Like, he's going to be there for the duration. Whether you think they overpaid, I mean, they improved their title odds this year. And when you have a real chance to win a title, and you could improve your odds even by 10%, 15%, maybe that's a little bit much, but if you can improve your odds more than 5%, right? Is that enough to give away a unprotected first round pick 6 years into the future? Do you need it to be 10%? Like, whatever their calculation is, I stand with it. I think it's a fair guess. And so now you have these two teams, and I'm only going to focus on the East today because that's the conference the Knicks are in. The West has their own kind of thing going on. West is really, I mean, you could make arguments for a lot of teams out West, but I think Denver is still cream of the crop. But just focusing on the East. So you have these two powerhouses, these two behemoths who went all in. Now, the thing with Boston, notably, and this is why I really like this trade, they can still put together a massive package. Let's say this year goes terribly for them. Let's say Kristaps Porzingis gets injured. Let's say Jrue Holiday gets injured. Let's just say the year goes bad. They could turn around and flip one of those big contracts. Porzingis, Holiday, even, let's, for argument's sake, let's say Brown or whatever, with still, I think, 3 firsts and 2 swaps, or 2 firsts and 3 swaps, whatever. They're not distant ones, right? Because they already gave away, they're out their 2028, and now they're out their 2029. But I'm pretty sure they could still do something with the 30, and then come next summer, they'll be able to do something with the 2031 pick. So like, they still have a decent amount of wiggle room, Boston does, to make one more move if they need be. So that's a really scary proposition. Anyway, I digress. So you clearly have these teams that are going for it in every way, shape, and form. They cannot be going for it more than they have gone for it. And they are going to be there, and they are going to be powers to be reckoned with over the course of the next 2 years in the Eastern Conference, Boston and Milwaukee. And then you have Philly, who is going through some stuff right now, and their media day promises to be an interesting state of affairs. And then everybody else falls in line after that. Cleveland, what's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell? Miami, did they miss their chance one too many times? And in that next grouping is the Knicks. Now, I've been thinking a lot about this Knicks season, this upcoming Knicks season, because I do feel like, even in as much as it seems like, well, how many different personalities can a basketball season take on, right? You're either a crappy team and you're gunning for a draft pick. you're a mediocre team and you're too good to get a good draft pick, but you're also not good enough to win a championship, or you're in the hunt for a championship. It really does seem like basketball seasons all have their own unique personality. And it's funny because I say that, and yet it seems like this should have been a season, as I'm going to describe it in a minute, that we've seen before from the Knicks, which is, as far as I could see, a year in which they just need to stay on the treadmill. And yes, I'm using that term purposefully. There was, you probably remember, there was an article that came out, I think for the Ringer, maybe it was actually Grantland, I don't know. It was one of Bill Simmons' websites that talked about the treadmill of mediocrity, right, in the NBA, and how certainty, like if you're not tanking and you're not a contender, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. The Knicks are not a contender. And I know there are some folks out there who would disagree with that. I don't need to say their names. They know who they are. But the Knicks are, barring something crazy, like truly insane, they're not going to win the championship this year. I would also say that barring something completely crazy, they are not going to be in the hunt for a high lottery pick this year. They are, I mean, you want to talk about a team that is just solid across the board, up and down, not without downside. There's some downside risk, and we'll talk about that over the coming weeks, but like solid. They're just solid. They are deep. I'm writing a whole thing for the newsletter for the start of training camp, like 4 through 9, let's say, even 4 through 10, you want to throw Deuce in there. Who's stronger than the Knicks? Rotation spots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3, like, because everybody has different definitions of depth. You could say the Nuggets, who have like 6 surefire NBA players right now, you could call them the deepest team in the league, because you could say, hell, with Jokic, all they need to go is 6 deep, right? But like, I'm specific. That's why I want to really focus it. Like 4 through 9, who's deeper than the Knicks? Or 4 through 10 again. You want to put Deuce in? I would argue nobody. So they have that backbone where they're gonna be good, barring again major injury or like something really going funky haywire, like something on the margins, like real or on the either end of the bell curve. But they're not contenders, and that means, for this season at least, they are still playing a season out in which their focus is not on this June. And that's why, for as much as the Jrue Holiday trade, like, initially bothered me a little bit, mostly because I was thinking about all of the, pearl clutching Knicks fans who, like, God forbid we ever part with, any young player on this team, let alone for a 33-year-old guard. Now, in fairness, those folks, I think, are right in this unique circumstance for this reason. If it took one of the Knicks young players and a very, very distant, unprotected first-round pick, that would have been too much to give up for Jrue Holiday. So take a bow if that was your stance, because if that's what it was. If it was just a young player and not a distant first, that would have been a slightly different conversation. But this is what it took to get Jrue Holiday. They did not make that move. And it is confirmation of what this season is and of what this season is not. And the treadmill that they are on, the reason I say they just need to stay on it is they are going to have their opportunity. And the other reason why I can't be all that mad at the Jrue Holiday, how it turned out, the Jrue Holiday trade, is because, yes, he went to a division rival. He did not go to the division rival that would have meant real problems for the Knicks forget about the season. Again, season doesn't really matter. But moving past that, and that's Philadelphia. Because if they figured out a way to flip James Harden and get Jrue Holiday, well, then this summer would have actually been potentially a disaster for the Knicks, because they would have seen Giannis get teamed up with a guard that he very much wants, it seems like, to play with. And will he request a trade? I doubt he's going anywhere for the next 2 years, right? And then you would have seen Joel Embiid get a running mate in Jrue Holiday, which again, would it have only appeased him for a few years? Maybe, but the Knicks have set themselves up to make their move next summer. They are not in the luxury tax this year. They are set up to go into the luxury tax next season, the 24-25 season. You're looking at Emmanuel Quickley's extension. You're looking at potentially new contracts for Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. They could sign Quentin Grimes to an extension a year from now. For salary cap, financial based reasons, next summer is the summer. They cannot continue to keep kicking the can down the road eternally and expect that, something good will happen eventually. No, they've set themselves up to make the trade next summer. That is the summer. And dare I say, this might be too presumptuous. Dare I say, next summer has always been the summer that Leon Rose has circled. I sat down before and I kind of went through we've done this, but really just like 10,000 foot view. Went through Leon Rose's tenure as a Knicks executive. And I'm going to rattle this off real quick. I'm going to make my point afterwards. So hires Tom Thibodeau, drafts Obi Toppin, signs 3 veterans, Burks, Noel, Austin Rivers. Actually traded for Austin Rivers, but it was a sign and trade. Resigns Taj Gibson. Doesn't trade Julius Randle when he starts having a great year. Trades for 33-year-old Derrick Rose. Next summer after that, brings back Burks, Noel, Rose, signs Kemba and Evan Fournier. There's the whole Cam Reddish thing in the midst of that, in which he trades a first that it was not going to be used on a player that they felt that at the time they had a rotation spot for, trades it for a distant first, and then flips that distant first into Cam Reddish. I'll get back to that one in a second. Obviously, that leads to the following summer. Jalen Brunson gets signed, trades the 11th pick for 3 future firsts, trades for Josh Hart, signs Dante DiVincenzo, and then in the midst of all that, drafts Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, and Deuce McBride. What do all of these moves have in common? They are about as safe a collection of transactions as you could imagine, given that Leon Rose has crossed the 3.5-year mark of his tenure as executive of the Knicks. He's been here he is 5 months short of his 4-year anniversary, March 2nd, 2024, will be 4 years. If he makes it past this season and he essentially executes New York's summer next July, he will be the longest tenured Knicks front office executive since the 90s. So it's going to be a pretty significant accomplishment. I think he gets there. So when you look at the fact that he's been here for that long, and then you ask yourself, what's the riskiest move he's made? Right? I mean, I guess you could say signing Evan Fournier to that was essentially a 3-year deal, and he looked at the landscape. He knew the Knicks were not going to have cap room the following summer, and which then gets us to this past summer, which is where they've tried to make efforts to sign Evan Fournier. you could argue he knew he was never going to have cap space again. So he's like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. We'll give this guy the 3 guaranteed years. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Worst case scenario, he's going to be a trade candidate, trade asset when he's an expiring contract. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But so was that the riskiest thing? Like, I don't think that was all that risky. Everything else, like trading for Josh Hart. Okay, he traded the 2024 first round pick, and the team was already, we knew what that pick was going to be. At absolute worst, he was giving up a pick in the mid to late teens. It ended up being a pick in the mid 20s. Was that risky? It wasn't risky. So the risk factor on these moves, very, very, very small in totality. And yet you look at all of them, and many of his moves have been characterized, which is pretty wild to say, that none of these moves are risky. And yet so often they're characterized as win now moves. And yes, a lot of them are win now moves, but not in the traditional win now sense. You know what's a win now move? Trading for Jrue Holiday is a win now move, right? Because if he traded for Jrue Holiday and kept Jrue Holiday from Boston, all of a sudden now Leon Rose could look himself in the mirror and be like, damn, I've given my team a real shot at the Eastern Conference Finals this year. You know, and who knows? Maybe we're a Dame Lillard or a Giannis Antetokounmpo ankle tweak away from we're back in the finals for the first time in a quarter of a century. Like, he could have traded for Jrue Holiday and absolutely made that argument. Miami got worse. Philly's going through it. Boston didn't get Jrue Holiday. We did. Porzingis health question mark, right? Like, they're maybe a little bit thinner. It's really just Milwaukee, who's like definitely on paper better than us. And as I just said before, they're kind of remaking their image, the image of their team in a way, because they went defense for offense. So like Leon Rose could have absolutely done that. The fact that he didn't, because again, what was the key piece in the Jrue Holiday trade? It was a distant first that Boston is in a position to trade away because of where they're at. But the moment the Knicks trade away a distant first round pick, all of a sudden that takes their big trade package and it weakens it considerably. How considerably? We don't even need to put a number on it, because considerably enough that it wouldn't be enough to get the guy that they're trying to get with that massive trade package. That's a win now move. What Leon Rose has done since day one of his tenure, everything has been to ensure competence, A, and B, to make their, I'm not even going to say make their asset portfolio better, because it's not just that. It's almost as if he has tried to skirt the line between increasing their asset base, but also making them so, as I use that word again, steady or stable or strong, whatever adjective you want to use, sturdy up the middle, that he knows he'll be able to make a big trade, and there's going to be more than enough here. Like Deuce McBride, people love Deuce McBride. Why? Because every time Deuce McBride checks into a game, you're like, that guy needs to be playing NBA rotation minutes. As it stands, he's not going to have a rotation spot this year, but that dude's an NBA player. Will we be thankful that we have Deuce McBride, and will he get more opportunities to do something as an NBA player? Potentially after next summer. Obviously, they need to re-sign him, but like a move like that, getting a guy like that, and like again, there's RJ, there's Quentin Grimes, there's Emmanuel Quickley. I know these players are not identical to one another, but they are all, love them or hate them, solid NBA rotation pieces. Maybe, God willing, maybe a little bit more than that. And that's something else that Leon Rose is hoping is the case. But like, steady as she goes. Alec Burks, steady as she goes. Reggie Bullock, didn't trade away Reggie Bullock. Steady as she goes. And then you look at some of the other moves. Obviously, Tom Thibodeau, who's the biggest floor raiser in the NBA as an NBA head coach? Tom Thibodeau. Julius Randle gets started All NBA campaign, first season here with the Knicks. Does Leon Rose trade him away? Absolutely not. Because he wanted the competence to continue to be high. And all of those other moves, trading for Derrick Rose, bringing back all of the guys a second year on contracts that a lot of people didn't love, making the play for Kemba, making the play for Evan Fournier, drafting the types of guys that he drafted. And then when he had an opportunity to not weaken the present, but also potentially make the future better, like the 11th pick for 3 future firsts, he'll make that move too. But everything, for the most part, has been trying to raise the water level and just making sure this team, and it didn't work 2 years ago. It fell flat on its face 2 years ago with Kemba and Evan Fournier, and it almost blew up in his face. But all of his efforts have been geared towards, let's keep getting better and better and better and better without me ever needing to dive into the deep end of the pool. And you could say, well, Jrue Holiday wouldn't have been the deep end because it's only one pick and, one of the young players and Evan Fournier's salary or whatever. It would have been deep enough. He hasn't gone past forget the shallow end of the pool. He's still on the steps. He's still clinging on to the handrail where you get into the pool. He's never veered out further than that in any move that he's made. All due respect to $71 million or $72 million to Evan Fournier. So skirting along, towing the line, walking the tightrope, any analogy you want to use. That's been his MO for 3.5 years. And if that was not crystal clear already, it was eminently clear and obvious by the fact that could the Knicks have beat out this package for Jrue Holiday? In a fucking heartbeat, they could have beaten this out. Here, take an unprotected future first from us, a team that's not nearly as good as Boston, and the future as of right now is murkier, and we'll throw in an unprotected swap the following year. Portland would have jumped up and down to get that, along with maybe one of the protected first round picks. He didn't do that. And it was not only proof of the MO and what the goal and what the ultimate prize has always been for Leon Rose. It's proof that, again, this season, they know that there was nothing that they were going to do this summer. They don't know along that there was nothing that they were going to do this summer that was going to get them legitimately into the conversation of we can win a title. How many teams are legitimately in that conversation? I don't know. You want to say 5? You want to say 6? You want to say 7? There are probably about 5-6 teams in the West alone that could talk themselves into it. But it was just more restraint. And a lot of Knicks fans are cheering that restraint because, again, the notion to them of trading away, whether it was an RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickley or Quentin Grimes, it would have been Barrett because financially, that's the only way this would have worked. But a lot of Knicks fans are cheering because they didn't trade away, again, Barrett or another young piece for Jrue Holiday, who's 33 years old. The irony in that is that a lot of those folks are cheering because they love seeing this team continue to keep the kids and keep bringing along the young players and the whole thing. When the reality is the only reason all these guys are still here and why they'll be here through this year, along with all of these picks, is because the trade hasn't come yet that Leon Rose feels comfortable enough including them in for. And he came close last summer with Donovan Mitchell, yes, but he had a line, and that line was very purposefully drawn. Did not want to go over that line because if he went over that line, he knew he wasn't going to have enough left over for the next guy. Now, was there a miscalculation involved there? I would say so. If he was going to ship off Emmanuel Quickley haphazardly, in addition to RJ Barrett and the picks they were going to send off, which if you believe the reporting, that was what was going to happen, he would have been selling really low on Emmanuel Quickley because now Emmanuel Quickley is a much better asset. So he got a little lucky there. You could argue he's gotten lucky a few times, but it doesn't change what his thinking is. It doesn't change what his thinking has been all along. So again, it brings me back to what is this season for the Knicks? What is the point? What is their goal? If their goal isn't to win it all, and if their goal isn't to tank for a draft pick, and they're stuck in between, it's very simple. Stay on the treadmill. If you could speed it up by a couple of tenths of a mile and start getting a little faster, all the better. But you can't start slowing down, and you really can't fall off, because they almost fell off 2 years ago. It was dangerous. But just keep on chugging along, because the opportunity is going to come. And if they keep on pushing and they keep on the path that they're on, look, are there things at stake? Absolutely, there are things at stake. Jalen Brunson put himself on the map last season as a star, capital S star. Can he follow that up with an equally good campaign, or maybe even something a little bit better? The kids that everybody loves, the Barretts and the Quickleys and the Grimes, and maybe even the Deuces, and whoever you want to throw in there. Throw him. Mitchell Robinson's still pretty young, right? Can one of them or two of them take a step up? Even if it's one of them, can one of them take a step forward of such significance that people around the league look and be like, whoa, now the Knicks have a real asset that they could throw in. Now the Knicks have their, Tyrese Maxey, someone that Philadelphia, we're not trading Tyrese Maxey, right? Or their Tyrese Halliburton, who was traded for Domantas Sabonis. Obviously, the Knicks are trying to get someone a little bit better than Sabonis. Or like any of these like blue chip prospect level players that aren't of the level of like like an Anthony Edwards or a Paolo Banchero, where obviously the team is just not ever going to trade them because they're too good. Can one of the young players take a step up to get into that in between zone? So that's at stake. And then like obviously the better you do, the better it is. Like if they make the second round of the playoffs, they make the conference final. Awesome, wonderful. But it needs to be to borrow a term from the casuals. They start every episode with it. How are the vibes this week? The vibes need to be good, because if the vibes are good, that means everything around the team is pretty solid. They stayed solid. They did what they needed to do. And next summer, it sure looks like Embiid's going to be the guy that they're going to have to make the play for, because it doesn't look like Giannis is coming on the market next summer. And I don't really see anybody else, other reasonable candidates, obvious candidates. You think Mark Cuban's going to trade Luka Doncic to the Knicks with 2 years left on two guaranteed years left on his deal? I wouldn't be holding my breath for that one. Think Leon Rose is going to wait around for the Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal era in Phoenix to start showing signs of fatigue and wait out a Devin Booker trade request? Got news for you. He ain't that patient, and he doesn't have that luxury, which is a separate issue altogether. But like, he's kicked again. I'm going to say it again. He's kicked the can down the road about as long as he can. And then obviously there is the doomsday scenario of, well, what if things go great in Philadelphia this year and Joel Embiid, has no interest in asking out. Obviously they're not going to trade him. Then what? Well, then we're going to have some dicier conversations, right? Because then it's like, all right, well, is Donovan Mitchell suddenly the fallback plan? Right. I don't know, but I do know what they're counting on, and what they're counting on at this point, it seems blatantly obvious to me, and it should be blatantly obvious to anyone listening, is that things continue to go awry in Philadelphia. So if you really want to, when it comes down to brass tacks, what is this Knicks season about? It's about how the Sixers do. That may seem a little curt, but as far as I could see, what goes on down there is every bit as important as what goes on here. Now, of course, again, I fully know that I don't know what percentage, 20, 30, 40, 50% of the people listening to this right now probably want no part of Joel Embiid. Well, sometimes beggars can't be choosers. And when you put all of your eggs in one basket, which again, I don't have to go through the things again. All the eggs are in the trade for a star basket. All the eggs have always been in the trade for a star basket, not any other basket. So he seems to be the guy that is by far most likely at this point. We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. So there it is, another year. Excited to get started. Again, in case you were zoning out at the beginning of the episode, 7 p.m. tonight. Be there, be square, Knicks Film School YouTube channel, and of course, if you aren't able to join us live at 7 p.m., the podcast version of that will be up tomorrow. That's it. Thanks for hanging out with me and spending some time on this fantastic Monday in the beginning of October. Hope everybody has a good start to your week, and we will be back with you very soon. Peace out.